7:15.
And in the Wellington studio also is the Prime Minister, Bill English. Good morning.
Good morning, Sue.
Let's just talk a little bit about some of the topics that may be discussed today with Rex Tillerson. How strong are the terms, for example, that you'll be speaking about the Paris Agreement and President Trump pulling out of that?
Look, pretty straightforward, as we've already stated. We disagree with their decision, acknowledge that it's a product of their domestic politics, a president implementing something he promised he would. However, we remain committed to the Paris Agreement because we believe everyone should play their part, and in future, hopefully, the US will come around to that view.
And here, of course, New Zealand, a Pacific country, Pacific island, neighbours under direct threat of that climate change. So, in your view, this is real, yes?
Yes, this is real. And yeah.
OK, so what exactly do you think it is that Rex Tillerson needs to hear, and what sort of sympathy do you think the former chief of Exxon is going to have for this?
Well, look, he's representing the administration. I'm sure he'll note our point of view. I don't expect that we're going to have an argument about it. We've got a number of other issues. I mean, we have a strong economy because of stability in the Asia Pacific, and we're keen to see the US continue to show leadership underpinning that security and economic success in the Asia Pacific. So that'll be important to us too.
Well, speaking of that territory, TPP, that's something also that President Trump has pulled out of. What kind of leadership is that showing? Well,
again, we disagree with that position. I mean, in both cases, the US administration is going in a different direction than what were assumed long-term US positions. However, we'll indicate to Mr. Tillerson that we are proceeding with TPP without the US in a way that in the long run may allow the US to join it.
What attempts are there to be made today to encourage Mr. Tillerson to see that perhaps TPP is something that he should lobby for back home, for the US to return to it?
Well, look, I'd imagine in the discussion indicate our support for trade. Mr. Tillerson, as part of the US administration, has decided to pull out of TPP, and that seems pretty straightforward.
OK. On security, America expecting to be asking for more troops for Iraq and Afghanistan. Is that something that New Zealand will contribute to?
Well, we have a specific request for Afghanistan for 2 people. We play a small but significant role in these 2 countries, training troops there and mentoring police. That's our contribution as with the London attacks, a Kiwi injured in those attacks or someone with a Kiwi passport indicate that we want to continue playing our role to protect Kiwis all around the world. So that's why we're committed to those places.
Would you step up that contribution, though, if asked?
Well, we have been asked around Afghanistan, and we're considering that.
What about Iraq?
Well, there's been no specific request.
Would you have any reservations if there were to be a further request for Iraq?
Oh, look, we always have reservations. I mean, you're putting your troops into risky places, and sometimes success is hard to define. But our troops have been doing a very good job in both places with training that's recognised, and we would hope that one day we get to a stage where the local defence and security forces are adequately trained to stabilise those countries.
Just to turn quickly to Five Eyes, is there any concern that you have around how the intelligence gathered by New Zealand may be used, for example, or indeed may be outed by the President, as indeed happened with intelligence that was passed to the Russians?
We haven't seen anything that indicates that intelligence from New Zealand or relevant to New Zealand is being mishandled. I mean, the Five Eyes is a close relationship. I'm sure that'll be affirmed today with Mr. Tillerson.
There is precedent, though, for the intelligence to be passed. Is that not something that would concern you?
Well, that is under investigation in the US, and that's up to them to sort out whether something happened or didn't happen. As I said, we haven't seen any indication that intelligence relevant to us is mishandled.
Do you think that the US is in safer hands with President Trump than it was with President Obama?
Well, look, we don't take a view about the domestic politics. I mean, what we know is the US is in the hands of an elected president, elected by the people of the United States.
And what about the
disagree.
World? Is the world in safer hands, do you think?
We disagree with a number of the policy positions. What I think you're seeing around the world is that where there is uncertainty, other countries, such as in Europe, are realigning their policy. If anything, it's bringing, say, the disparate views about Europe together to a stronger Europe. I think in the Asia Pacific, where we'd all prefer to see US leadership, such as in the TPP, if they've pulled out, then the other countries are pulling together to move that agreement forward without the US.
Let's talk a little bit about London and the terror attacks there over the weekend. Is there any consideration here to change the threat level following 2 terror attacks, I think it is now, in the UK in 2 weeks?
The threat level in London is running at severe.
But is there something that you want to consider regarding New Zealand in that territory?
Yeah, well, the official group here will look at the travel advisory as to whether they change the rating on that now. As of this morning, that hasn't altered. I've spoken to people over the weekend, Kiwis considering going there, who I think now would regard it as a bit of a concern, whereas a month ago they wouldn't have. So, people have to make up their own mind, but the travel advisory, I'm sure, will be considered again.
Do you think that social media sites need to be more aggressively policed? Would you support this? More aggressively policed by the government regarding extremist material and content?
Look, I think obviously that's been speculated on, particularly in the UK, extremely difficult to do. I think it is important, though, that the whole community, including the Muslim community, take a view that extremism won't be tolerated. Now, in New Zealand, we're in the fortunate position where that is the case. We've got secure borders. We've got, I think, a New Zealand community that wouldn't tolerate extremist views being expressed. That's in other countries they are expressed, and it's a challenge for authorities to work out what to do about it. So we want to maintain our security first and foremost, and the environment we currently have where threat levels are very low.
I appreciate your time. That's the Prime Minister, Bill English, in the Wellington studio, and it's now 28 minutes.